start. Welcome everybody to this webinar. We are very pleased to have you all here and happy to get started. In today's webinar, ISIS, the International Solar Energy Society, is happy to welcome the IEA SHC Solar Academy Series once again to present on the IEA SHC Task 66 this time. My name is Melina. I'm the Congress Communications and Outreach Officer here at ISIS headquarters in Freiburg, Germany, and I will give you a short introduction on ISIS and the work we do, as there are quite a few people that are new here today. So I'll go ahead with this. So the International Solar Energy Society, ISIS, is a non-profit UN-accredited membership NGO founded in 1954. And ISIS represents a diverse membership of academics, researchers, energy practitioners, consultants, students, businesses, and advocates. And our vision is 100% renewable energy for all, used efficiently and wisely. And ISIS works together with like-minded organizations from all around the world to advance the renewable energy transformation. At ISIS, we work on several key areas to advance our mission, which is the organization of two major scientific congresses, the Solar World Congress, which you see there, and the Eurosun on biannual rotation. So this year we are going to India with the Solar World Congress, and we also publish the Solar Energy Journal since 1957, one of the oldest and leading journals in the field. And our latest edition is the Solar Energy Advances Journal since 2021, which is the ISIS fully open access journal. We also do webinars. We started offering webinars in 2012, and now they have developed as a key activity for the society on a monthly basis. So it's a pleasure to have you all here in this webinar. And we also offer education initiatives for students. One key initiative is INCORE, our initiative on international cooperation in higher education, and we also do infographics and a solar energy museum to advance knowledge sharing. And yeah, now for the Q&A session of this webinar, some brief information before we start. We invite you to send your questions that you might appear during the presentations, and we are looking forward to your participation. So you can send questions. There is a question box that you can use, and yeah, please feel free to start sending in your questions anytime throughout the webinar, and in the end there will be a Q&A session where you can address them. And with this, I'm happy to introduce our moderator for today, Bärbel Epp. She is the founder and managing director of the consultancy Solrico. Hello, Bärbel. And
hello, Melina. Yes. Okay. I will share my screen.
Yes.
Good. Yeah, good afternoon from my side. My name is Bärbel Epp. I'm from the agency Solrico, and I will moderate this webinar today. Before we start with a real topic, I will give you a brief introduction into what is the IEA Solar Heating and Cooling Program. It's a fairly large international R&D collaboration program with 19 member countries and 8 international organizations. Around 200 experts, rather researchers, but also from industry, group together and work on a number of subjects which are very highly relevant for solar thermal. We have listed them here for you. It's solar neighborhood planning, it's solar process heat, we have solar cooling, as we have today, solar energy building, but also compact thermal storages. Solar district heating is a big topic, but also thermosiphon systems in the Asian world, integrated lighting, and life cycle and cost analysis. So you see that we cover all these countries which are colored on the map, either by a direct membership of a country or by a sponsor membership. So if you're interested in joining one of these tasks, first you have to check whether your country is member of the IEA SHC. That you can do on the website because there is a list of countries, and you can just look into this listing and you will find your country and see whether it's member. Besides that, on the SHC website, all these tasks, this is how we call these research programs, are listed, which are 9 at the moment, and you can look on the subtasks pages, you can look on the task manager's contact information, and you can easily contact a task manager and see what interest you have and what expertise and whether there's any chance to cooperate and profit and also contribute to a new task or also a running task. Yeah, the SHC Solar Academy is a platform that gives room to showing what was done within this research platform, which is already 50 years old. So we have different training materials, case studies, fact sheets, also tools, design tools, evaluations online. We have these quarterly webinars hosted by ISIS, which is a very nice and long-term cooperation. The next webinar will be in November on thermal energy storages, and you find the previous webinars, the recordings, as well as the future webinars always on this website under Solar Academy on IEASHC.org. You also find there a number of videos with interviews that we have done on conferences. And an important issue is we also offer on-site training, which is available on request by an IEA SHC member country or organization. And the past trainings were in the Caribbean, China, South Africa, and UK. Some contact information, you can visit our website. As it says here, you can find under publication the long list of reports, tools, fact sheets that were published. Obviously, follow us on social media. We have a Twitter account, which is X now, and we have a LinkedIn group. And if you have additional questions, you can contact the Secretariat under this email. 2 flagship reports to mention. The Solar Heat Worldwide is an annual report, which is the biggest data gathering of all solar heating and cooling technology and market news that we have. It's published in June each year, and you find the latest edition on our website, free for download, also with the infographics under this link, which is given in yellow below. And we have a 2 years, like in June and December, always a solar update, which is a newsletter and gives you some insights and highlights of the running tasks. Yeah, this was the short introduction. Now we get into our today's topic, which is task 66. It's on solar energy buildings. And I'm happy to welcome our first 2 speakers, which will have a tandem speech. So you get the screen back very well. We have already Frank Späte with us and Harald Drück. They are both involved in the task 66 work and will hold the first presentation together to introduce the task. So Dr. Harald Drück is leader of the team on sustainable building and smart city concepts, as well as head of R&D at the Institute of Building Energetics, Thermodynamics and Energy Storage at the University in Stuttgart, Germany. His scientific background is predominantly related to renewable energy supply for buildings and districts with high solar fractions. Also heat storages, certification schemes are part of his specialties. Harald is also chairman of the Global Solar Certification Network and manages the Task 68. So Frank Späte, he is professor at the Technical University of Applied Science at Arnberg-Weiden in Germany since 2014, where he's teaching and conducting research in the field of energy efficient buildings and renewable energies. He has also experiences in the industry as he was working with Rehau, a German heating technology company, for over 8 years. He recently became vice president of the German Society of Solar Energy. And their presentation, as I said, will be a joint one and introducing the task work for us. So please, Harald and Frank, I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Yeah, thank you very much for the nice introduction, Bärbel. And hello to everybody around the globe. I'm very happy that you made it to attend our presentation about Task 66, which is named Solar Energy Buildings. And as already mentioned by Bärbel, it will be a tandem presentation. So we will share the content. I would like to talk a bit about the motivation. Why do we deal with solar energy buildings? And then I would like to give you an overview about Task 66, talking about the targets, the team, the organization, and the deliverables. And then Frank Späti will take over, presenting the first results, which are key performance indicators for solar energy buildings and also reference buildings that we defined. And finally, a summary and an outlook. So, solar energy buildings. I think it's a quite artificial word. So if you look it up in a dictionary, which is at least 10 years old, I'm sure you will never find it. But what does it mean? It means buildings that are supplied with a high solar fraction during their operation period. And now the question is, why do we focus on such buildings? And the answer you can find on this slide. There is this graph, and there is the different sources for our CO2 emissions. And what you can see is that the operation of building accounts for around 28% of our CO2 emissions, and the construction of the buildings for around 11%. That means if you sum it up, it's around 40% of the CO2 emissions globally that are caused by buildings. And roughly it's also around 40% of the primary energy consumption that is consumed by buildings. So that means buildings are the predominant factor for our climate problem. And of course, that means it's necessary to focus on the aspects that are predominant, and this is the building sector. And this is why we established this Task 66 on solar energy buildings. So, what are the targets of Task 66? The overall target of Task 66 is to focus on the development of economic and ecological energy supply concepts for buildings with high solar fractions. Now the question is, what means high? The answer is, as usual, it depends. It depends on two things. One is what kind of solar fraction? Is it a fraction for heating? Is it a fraction for cooling? Or is it a fraction for electricity supply? And the other aspect is, where is the building located? And we say for moderate climates, like for example, Central Europe, we aim at 85% of the heating demand to be covered by solar energy. And for sunny climates, it's 100%. With regard to the cooling demand, it's for moderate climates, vice versa. It's 100% for the cooling demand and 85% for the cooling demand in sunny climates, like for example, Central Australia or Central China. And then with regard to the electricity demand, and electricity is the overall electricity demand of the building. So for the operation of the household appliances and also taking into account e-mobility if available, we say for moderate climate, we would like to achieve 60% of solar fraction, and for sunny climates, 80%. And now what is extremely important is that the calculation of solar fraction is based on short time intervals. So we look at 15-minute time intervals. It's not an annual energy balance, like you can easily achieve more than 100% if you have a big PV system and a heat pump, but this does not really help. So we look at short time intervals, 50 minutes, and there we aim at the solar fractions that are mentioned here. So who is we? We are a team of 30 to 40 experts that usually participate in our task meetings, participating countries, are more or less covering representative areas of the globe. So we have, of course, a focus on Europe with Austria, Germany, Switzerland, Poland, Belgium, Albania, UK. But we also have participants from Australia, from India, from the US, from Mexico. And yeah, so I think it's really a consortium that covers all with regard to climate zones relevant countries. And up to now, we had 5 meetings. 4 of them were virtual and 1 was physical. And the next physical meeting is approaching. It will be on the 9th of October this year in Graz, Austria, a very nice city. And if you are interested in joining, Bärbel just mentioned at the beginning how to join an IEA task, so you are very welcome to do so. How is our task organized? It's organized as typical tasks are organized. Duration is 3 years, so we have, yeah, I would say a bit more than 2/3 of the time behind us. So the end of the task will be in June next year. As already mentioned by Bärbel, I have the honor to manage this task, and task administrator is my colleague Claudia Schollhaaf, also working at the University of Stuttgart together with me. And then we have 3 subtasks. Subtask A, focusing on one hand on boundary conditions, key performance indicators, definitions, and also dissemination, led by Frank Späte. He will talk in a few minutes and present you the first results of subtask A. Then we have subtask BC. If you are an expert in IEA task, you might wonder why is it called BC and not B or C. The reason is that at the beginning we started with subtask B and C, but then we detected more and more synergies if we merge the both subtasks, and this is what we did, and now it's called subtask B and C, and it's focusing on new and existing buildings and building blocks or communities, and it's led by Elisabeth Nielsen, who is also with us today and will also give a presentation. And then there is a co-lead from our dear colleagues from China, Itzishu Zhang and Wenbo Chai from the Chinese Academy of Building Research in Beijing. And then we have subtask D, looking on current and future technologies and components, which is also co-led by Thomas Ramschak and Michael Gumhalter. And Michael will also present us some results of subtask D. So, of course, the task is performed in order to have an impact, and the impact can be achieved by deliverables. And with regard to the deliverables, we have 3 main target groups. One is the general public, so that means we do information about the advantages and the benefits of solar energy buildings. We have elaborated a nice description of demo cases to inspire people to go for solar energy buildings if they are in the position to decide about such a building. So this is one idea. It's also supported by several workshops we are going or we have already performed and are going to perform during the task. Second target groups are the experts. That means the persons who have to design solar energy buildings, and with regard to them, we collect information about the design process and design tools for solar energy buildings, so to pave the way for them to design such buildings in the future. And the building is one thing, the technology inside the building is the other thing. And with regard to this, we also elaborated a description of an available technology portfolio of different technologies that are required or that can be used in the context of solar energy buildings. And finally, the third target group are the decision makers. So that means, for example, people in the government or in local municipalities. And for them, we elaborate promotion documents on one hand with regard for investors, if they're going to decide about building a new building, then we try to convince them that this new building should be a solar energy building. This is one target group. The other target group are politicians. So, for example, with regard to the advantages that result from the city, if solar energy buildings are implemented there, positive image, less emissions, independent of price fluctuations of fossil fuels, and so on. And also for this target group, of course, the description of demo cases that we elaborated is quite useful. So that's from my side, just to give you an overview what we are doing and why we are doing this and what is the outcome. And now I'm happy to give the word and the screen to Frank, who is talking about subtask A.
Yeah, thank you, Harald. Oh, Harald, I need the slides. I can't see the slides.
I need the Freigabe again. Milia, can you? Yeah, okay, perfect, thanks. So there it is.
Yeah, thanks. Some technical problems, but very quickly solved. As A is usually the first letter in the alphabet, the subtask A is the first subtask which we presented today, and we have as the first subtask of our task some results already, some deliverables, which was planned like this. And it's my pleasure now to present you these highlights of the first activities, and they are outlined here. KPIs, so key performance indicators, we worked out, and reference buildings. There are mentioned two more. Hang on, back again, please. There are mentioned two more activities in our subtask A that are industry workshops. Coming back to this later, because this is an ongoing activity over the whole time of the task. And last one, that was mentioned by Harald before, the target groups, investors, politicians, building owners. We will work out guidelines, which will be one of the next activities and working packages we will work out. Please, next slide. Yeah, come to the key performance indicators, so the KPIs. Well, KPIs are known, of course, and are used in many fields of science and also in industry, in energy management, and so on. So we defined here the most important KPIs for our solar energy buildings. Why did we do that? Because we want to evaluate and compare different buildings, and not only buildings. So our target is not only the single building, but also building blocks, communities, small settlements, and for all these are the KPIs here worked out for evaluating and comparing these different kind of buildings, and also evaluate and compare the concepts, the different concepts in for these kind of buildings and settlements. And finally, we can also optimize components in these buildings in terms of energy flows, economies, but also ecological. And you find all these in the KPIs. So we have not only energetic and technical KPIs, but also ecologicals, economicals, and sociologicals, means regarding the user's behavior. And altogether, these are 17 KPIs listed. And well, we have a draft publication already of this. And I guess it will be soon published, but it's available on demand. Next slide, please. Just to give you an impression of how it looks like, we tried to illustrate all the KPIs here with those kind of illustrations that you can see here. The building stands here for also for building blocks and communities, as I mentioned. And we have the whole chain, so we take into account all the energy flows from the primary energy to the useful energy, which you can see here. This is an example for the solar fraction, which was mentioned already before, which is one of the most important KPIs to define a solar energy building. But that is not the only one, of course. As I mentioned, 17 of those KPIs are found out and defined here, in a very good manner. You can see it is for the solar fraction here a long formula on top. Maybe some of you think now this is only for scientific purposes. No, it's also supposed to be used in reality, and also for deciders like politicians or for planners. Here we, as I said, we took into account all the energy flows that can be there in buildings and building blocks, and usually we do not have all this energy flows, so then it will be simplified much, these formulas, and then they are easy to use. As Harald mentioned, we are a group of experts, and all this was worked out within a group of, let's say, roughly 10 experts in subtask A here. And here, particularly Franziska Bockelmann, Tilman Gauer, and me was working on this KPI list, which I should mention. And many thanks to the authors and the experts that worked on this topic. Next slide, please. Come to the next point, that are reference buildings. Reference buildings, also here we do not look only for single buildings, but also building blocks and communities. So the same thing, same target buildings. And we had a controversial discussion in the beginning. Does it make sense to define reference buildings, and how can we do that, and why? And we found out because of these three reasons, which are mentioned here, we decided to define those reference buildings. First one, it's on the basis of such a reference, which is clear and comprehensible in the boundary conditions and so on. We can compare different energy supply concepts very well. We can also elaborate reasonable energy supply concepts for our targeted buildings, building blocks, and communities. And we can validate and calibrate simulation models based on this reference buildings. So there are good reasons for defining reference buildings, which was not so easy. We had a lot of discussions on that, which is quite complex. We found out two possible methods. One is defining a reference building worldwide, or a group of reference buildings worldwide joined, or for country specific. And discussing all the pros and cons, we came to a definition of country specific reference buildings. Next slide, please. Here are the reasons for that, why we defined country-specific reference buildings. And basically it's because we have different boundary conditions in each country with different building materials, different heating, cooling, HVAC systems, and so on. And so it does not make really sense to define a worldwide reference building, but more or less country specific, whereas it's possible to put let's say neighboring countries of the same climate conditions together and have the same reference buildings for those regions, let's say. And here you can see, as I said, the reasons for us to define. And what we have done is we have created a table, an Excel table, with all the let's say materials, like for example U values of the building envelope, defining the heating, cooling system, the ventilation system, and so on. So you have, if you want to define your reference building in your specific country, you get a tool which is this Excel table, and you can insert what is specific in your country. Of course, you can define also a group of buildings. So let's say, for example, single buildings or building blocks, communities, which is all possible with this, with this tool that we created within this activity. It's not shown here, the table, but is available on demand and will be published also soon. And also here we have some different experts working in this field, and the main authors are given here: Markus Peter and Dominik Bestenlehner. Thanks to them as well for working it out. As I said, it was quite complex, and we hope that it can be a help, a aid in defining those references and using them, as I mentioned before. Yeah, thank you very much. I give over to Harald again. Harald, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Frank, for introducing us to this basic KPIs and giving an overview about reference building, especially the motivation, why we did it in a way as we did it. And it might be a bit not that exciting, but I think it's really important to have valid definitions, because everybody talks about solar fraction, and if everybody defines a solar fraction by its own, then it makes no sense to compare anything. So they are really a very important basis. And this leads me to the end of our first part of the presentation. And this is an invitation to our fourth industry workshop. It will be about solar energy supply concepts for buildings and districts in an international context. So we will have speakers from China, from Austria, from Denmark, talking about solar energy buildings. Also from Germany, we will have an example. And it will take place as a physical event only. It will be on the 9th of October in the afternoon in Graz in Austria, a very nice city. I think also a very nice opportunity to come to Austria, to Graz, if you live in Austria or in one of the neighboring countries. That will be our workshop. Information is also available on the internet. Also, with regards to our next task meeting, which I already mentioned, will take place on the same day in the morning. And having said this, this leads me to the end. So here you can see the website of Task 66, where all this information is available. And I would like to thank Frank for sharing the presentation with me, and I would like to thank you for listening, and I would like to give the screen back to Bärbel.
Yes, perfect. Harald, Frank, thank you very much. I think this gave us a good insight into how complex solar energy buildings are, and how you can start defining KPIs and as well reference buildings even on a country level. Well done. Thank you for the nice presentation. We will have our Q&A session at the end, so feel free to type in your questions while the others are presenting. We have our next speaker coming from Denmark. Elisabeth Nielsen is a senior researcher at the Department of Civil and Mechanical Engineering at the Technical University of Denmark. There she also received her PhD about solar combi systems already in 2007, so she looks back at 26 years of solar research. Her areas of expertise are different types of storages, including solar heating systems, also testing and numerical modeling. She's part of the management team, as we heard, of Task 66, and she will speak today about concepts for new and existing solar energy buildings and building blocks, with a special focus on demonstration and control strategies. So Elspeth, I'm looking forward to your presentation.
So,
yes, perfect.
Thank you for the nice introduction, Bärbel. So, good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I will talk about concepts for new and existing solar energy buildings and building blocks. So I will talk about what is important to reach a high degree of self-sufficiency, and then I will talk about solar energy buildings around the world, or maybe it should be around the globe because we don't include all the world. And that will be based on demonstration cases that we have gathered in the task. And finally, I will look at some trends that we find from this. So what is important to reach a high degree of self-sufficiency? So here in the upper left corner, I'll just put on the pointer. You see this is the Danish building regulation. So we see on the y-axis how many kilowatt hour per square meter of living area the building can maximum use. And then on the x-axis, we see the time. So we can see back 50 years ago, that was a very high energy demand the buildings were allowed to have. And as we moved to today, we are here. So this is the mandatory demand of for the energy demand of the building today. But we also have in Denmark a voluntary energy class. So I'll focus on these two energy classes. And for that, I'll define we have defined two single-family houses, one for the mandatory energy class, which is this one, and one for the voluntary energy class. And they have 2 residents each. And then we want to apply these technologies here. So that is a solar thermal, PV, heat pump. And then we want to apply a combi tank with 2 temperature levels, battery. And then we also applied tracking on both the solar thermal and the PV panels. And the investigation takes place in a Danish climate, which is a temperate climate. We are pretty far north, so we have very long light summers, and we have also very long dark winters. So that is the climate we have. We actually have 4 seasons. But defining these 2 buildings, we have for the mandatory, we have energy demand of 7,300 kilowatt hour per year, divided between some energy demand for the heating and domestic hot water and ventilation and so forth. And then we have the electricity demand for the consumer. For the voluntary class, we have an energy demand of 5,100 kilowatt hour per year. And we can see that the electricity demand stays the same. It's the same house with the same inhabitants. Or it's not the same house, it's now better insulated. So what we see is that the energy demand for space heating and domestic hot water is reduced. Actually only the energy demand for space heating, because the domestic hot water is also the same. So to investigate, we made a Polyson model of the systems. You can see here all the different technologies are applied. PV, battery, the consumer, and the solar thermal and a heat pump. And this combined storage tank with a domestic hot water volume in the top and a space heating volume below. So we also defined the self-sufficiency, which is given as the total energy demand minus the electricity bought from the grid, divided with the total energy demand. And the results shows that in both cases we reached 90% self-sufficiency, which is good. For the mandatory energy regulation, we came to a solar thermal collector area of 54 square meters, 3 kilowatt heat pump, 48 square meters of PV, and 21.55 cubic meter of thermal storage and 30 kilowatt of battery. If you go to the voluntary class, yeah, the heat pump and the PV and the battery, no, the heat pump changes a little bit. The heat pump is actually reduced, but the PV and the battery is the same. And the solar collector area, the thermal solar collector area is reduced to 33% and the storage to 12 cubic meter. So reducing the energy demand by 30% leads to a higher reduction of the thermal components. So how to cover the last 10%? So here you see the number of hours with low electricity spot prices in Denmark. So the price here is 0.0135 euro per kilowatt hour. And you see here the number of hours per month for the different years from 2014 to 2022. And we also see the monthly average. It's this line here. And to make it more clear, I put the numbers up here. So this is the monthly average where we have this low electricity price. But if we accept a higher electricity price, so what happens then? Yeah, as expected, if we accept a higher electricity price, this is what we can see on the x-axis, then we get more hours every month where we can utilize cheap electricity. And this is the electricity that we should use to cover the last 10% of the energy demand from the previous slide. And these prices are from the European power market, Nord Pool. So according to this investigation, this is important to reach a high degree of self-sufficiency at a low cost. So reduce the energy demand of buildings and use low temperature heating systems. It could be floor heating or oversized radiators. Floor heating, that will be used in new buildings, but oversized radiators, you get that once you insulate the building envelope very well and keep the heating system there. It's already an oversized heating system. And then it's usable for heat pumps that operate most efficiently at low temperature levels. Then you should use solar energy to cover the energy demand, because solar energy is the only, it's purely renewable, 100% renewable. And then you should use reduce the electricity consumption when renewable energy is limited, and that is very easy because in that case the electricity is very expensive, so you don't want to use it there. So to shift the use to a period with cheap electricity, then you could use it energy storage. And finally, use smart control system. And a smart control system should be based on forecasts of the electricity price and forecast of the solar radiation, and perhaps also forecast of the consumption. And these forecasts are given more than 24 hours ahead. So you need a smart control to figure out how to provide all the energy needed in the system in the cheapest possible way. So this will, of course, reduce the system size and the costs. So now we come to the demonstration cases. So we have these are the 20 demonstration cases that we have. So we have some from 8 different countries and from 3 different continents. And some of the cases are located in district heating areas, and some are located outside district heating areas. So here you see how the demo cases are located across the globe. So we have a lot of demo cases here in Europe. Then we have demo cases in Asia, that is in India and in China, and we have a demo case in Australia. This shows the technologies that are applied in these different demo cases. So you see the technologies up here, and we have the countries. So we can see that most of the countries are from Europe. Then we have some countries from Asia, and finally we have the country from we have Australia also there. And then this shows how many of these systems are located in district heating areas, and this shows if measurements are available from the system or if it's calculated performance data that are available from the system. So let's look at what are the popular technologies. So I summed up these rows. And the winner is photovoltaic. That is very popular. So 17 of the systems have photovoltaic. And then hot water storage is also popular. And batteries, and then e-mobility, and also solar thermal. And the rest of the technologies are more distributed. So I will present you some of the systems, and those, sorry, that was the wrong way. Those systems here I will present to you in the following slides. So the first system is given by Thomas Ramczak from IEA Intech, and this is about a former industrial complex that is made into a commercial residential complex. It's located in Austria, which lies in a continental climate. So this is very similar to the Danish climate with significant annual variations in temperature and solar radiation. And the technologies that are applied here are a gas boiler, and then groundwater heat pumps, PV, hydropower plants, battery capacity or batteries, an electrical vehicle, and thermal activation of the mass. And I just want to go back, sorry, because I forgot to mention here that if we look at number of technologies used, so we can see that if we are in Europe, the number of technologies used is between 4 and 7. And when we come to Asia, the number of technologies is less, it's 1 to 3. And then we have Australia, which is more similar to Europe than Asia. So we are back here. So let's look at the performance data. It's calculated for when the whole area is transformed, which has not yet, it's not yet completed yet, but then it's expected to have a self-sufficiency degree of 75%. The next case, that is a multi-family solar house in Germany, also lying in a continental climate. And we see that we have the two buildings in question are located up here, connected thermally connected to the other buildings here in the neighborhood. But we will only focus on the energy system for one of the buildings, and it uses solar thermal collectors, heat storage, a gas boiler, PV, battery, and geothermal collectors for cooling, and also electrical vehicle charging stations. And the performance of this building is that on the electrical side, it has 93% of self-sufficiency, and on the thermal side is 83%. So that is actually really impressive high numbers. And these are measured data. The next system is given by Stephanie Lott from the University in Stuttgart. This system has floor heating and floor cooling in the building, and then it uses a heat pump and thermal storage, and domestic hot water is prepared by instantaneous water heaters at each tapping location, and then it has a centralized big ice storage. This is the one you see here. So this allows for, because we have 10 buildings here, and this is where the ice storage is located. So this ice storage is connected to all the heat pumps that are located in each of the buildings. So and this is a sort of a low temperature district heating network called an energy net, where it's really cold temperatures that are circulated around, so they're not directly usable. They need to be lifted in temperature by means of a heat pump. So this is the system here. And the performance data is a self-sufficiency of 53%. It's not so high. On the heating side, it's very fine, but on the cooling side, 33%, and on the electricity side, 28% is not so high. Then we have the demo case from China, given by Xinyu Xiang and Wenbo Kai from the Chinese Academy of Building Research. Now we are still in a continental climate. And here it's a an office building that is transformed into this solar energy building. It has been renovated, and a lot of PV are put on the building. So the technologies for the energy system is PV panels, and 3 different types of PV panels are used. And then electric heating for domestic hot water. And in the summer, the PV run the air conditioning of the building and also provide electricity for the building. And in the winter, the building uses district heating, and it also includes electrical vehicle charging stations. So the self-degree sufficiency of this building is 31%. But the electricity here does not cover the heating demand. So as you can see here in this graph, that during the heating season, that is not covered by this solar energy building. So it's a net zero energy building that produces more electricity than it needs. So it also supplies a large amount of electricity to the grid. The next building here is from Christoph Müller from the company Solar Simple. And it's a system located in a mountain region, Ladakh in Himalaya, which lies in India. And you see the system concept up here. So the energy system consists of solar air collectors, not thermal collectors, and it has a pebble bed storage, and then it uses thermal mass activation, and it has a PV panel to operate the ventilator here. And the performance of this system is that it has a self-sufficiency degree of 94%, and that is measured. And here you can see the temperatures, the ambient temperatures, the temperatures on the floor, and the temperatures in the room over the year. And these mountain regions with cold but sunny winters, they are actually available many locations in the globe. So you can see the locations here where this technology would be suitable. Then we come to India. And here I included all the systems. They are actually somewhat alike. They all use PV for electricity production, and then they have a diesel generator for electricity backup. The systems operate a cooling system, and they also cover a part of the electricity consumption. And we have so far no measurements from these systems, but they will come in the near future, and I'm very excited to see the performance factors of these from these systems. Then there is the system from Australia. It's a single family house, and the climate zone is a Mediterranean climate, and the energy system consists of PV panels and battery and heat pump and electrical vehicle charging station. And apart from the energy system, there are also technologies that makes the house even more sustainable. And the performance data show that a self-sufficiency degree of 89%, which is also very high. Then for the trends, in Europe, we see that systems with a mixture of a high number of different technologies are found. So they use PV, heat pump, battery, solar thermal, energy network, ice storage, advanced control strategies, and thermal mass activation. In Asia, we see systems with a few different technologies, and these are typical PV, battery, solar thermal, and thermal mass activation. So I will thank you for listening. So this is the end of the presentation.
Thank you very much. This was exciting to have a turn around the whole world and see different solar energy buildings and also performance data, which is always different from just looking at architecture. Thank you very much. So we have another speaker, following Elisabeth, also with some, I think, case studies. It's Michael Gumhalter. He is a scientific researcher at the IEA Intec in Gleisdorf in Austria since 3 years. His focus is on system integration of renewable energy technologies. He is originally electrical engineer with a broad experience in software development and thermal building simulations. He is developing model-based control methods for buildings and renewable energy systems. And he will talk about current and future technologies and components for solar energy buildings. So, Michael, the floor is yours. Perfect.
Michael, you're muted.
Oh, sorry, slight technical problems there. So, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Now it's
Thank
perfect.
you.
Thanks.
So, yeah, hello, and thank you for the nice introduction. I want to welcome you to my presentation on the current and future technologies and components for solar energy buildings. This topic is, as you can think, like it's of course part of the Task 66 solar energy buildings, and in particular part of subtask D. And what awaits us today is a review on solar energy buildings across Europe and other parts of the world to gather information about currently applied technologies and system solutions. The technologies are classified into different topics like heating, cooling, energy storage, and grids, and they are also benchmarked, of course. A resulting energy guide can show market readiness and future prospects for the recorded technologies to help with implementation and planning, yeah, as the goal basically of this. So,
Your slides have not changed yet.
My slides have
I'm
not
sure.
changed.
Did you try to change that?
Yeah, I've changed it. Maybe I'll start sharing again because they move here on my screen.
They move in your screen, okay. Ah, now it moved to 2.
Now it, yeah, okay. So, okay, this was the slide I was talking about.
Okay.
Do they move now?
Yes, it seems to work now.
Okay, perfect. So, we started in the first activity with the documentation of relevant technologies, and our main data came from 2 sources. On the one hand, we looked into the demo cases of the Task 66, the ones that also Elspeth talked about, and many more. And in the second step, the team in the subtask D did a desk research and look at case studies. So case studies from R&D projects like Horizon 2020 projects, other tasks from International Energy Agency, from different programs like SHC, EBC, but also national programs. And to structure the data, the occurring technologies were listed and clustered into, as I said, generation, storage, grid, and building related technologies. And we have also sorted them according to a little climate classification, and this is giving us insights into the regional deviations. So the first source are our case studies, and as you already heard, they show a broad portfolio of technologies for the different building typologies, including also a few Elspeth introduced before. So I don't want to repeat any information here, but as you know, they range from high-tech solutions, emerging technologies, to low-cost solutions for the high mountainous regions. So there are technologies included which are not yet in the market, which have a lower TRL and are tested also, for example, on lab scale. And we also have a lot of systems there which are still trying to be integrated into larger systems. So this is the focus of those sample buildings. And then we have the second data source, which are 126 solar energy building cases coming from the national and international funded projects. These are projects like smart city projects funded by the European Union, projects which deal with positive energy buildings, but also projects from national funding programs which fund investments in renewable energies to reach high solar fractions. As the criteria or the definition of the task 66, as we heard in Harald's presentation, is very ambitious, and not all the cases fulfill these criteria. This does not make them less ambitious. So they are still highly resource efficient and have a high share of renewables. So here you can just see a small table with a few of these solar energy buildings. Of course, this is just a small part of the whole table. If you're interested in the whole list, you can find this in the deliverable of Subtask D, which will be finalized soon. So in general, these identified cases are distributed across Europe. So I think we find most of the relevant technologies, even if they are special ones in different countries and different climate zones, they are probably included in this survey. Continuing on that, you see the climate classification of the European Commission and the division of categories based on the heating degree days, which creates 4 main climate zones, or we could also say climate characterizations. You see this on the left map there. And what is interesting when we see the solar energy buildings marked as dots on the right map, then there is no clear majority of buildings in a specific heating degree day zone. So we find solar energy buildings in every category, basically. More than 30% are in the high heating degree day zones in the north and in the middle of Europe. Approximately half of the cases are evenly distributed between moderate high and low moderate heating degree days, and all the remaining buildings are in the warmer climate. However, you can see, of course, this gives us a lot of technologies we have to handle, because just of the sheer amount of the reference buildings we have there. And so we try to cluster them by topics. So we have topics: generation, storage, thermal grids, and buildings and communities. And I won't start here to go into detail on every one of these points in the list. So I want to just give you a rough overview of what we have included in there as technologies. For the generation technologies, you have here the typical suspects for solar generation: photovoltaics and solar thermal collectors. But we also have a lot of heat pumps in there, and any kind of also renewable electricity generation, also biomass for the high heating degree day zones. If we go to storage technologies, again here, storage for electricity, most prevalent, typical battery storage, but we also have, of course, the thermal storages, typical hot water tanks, but also chemical storages and others. For the thermal grids, we also have a big variety of possible variations. So we have classical heating, we have low temperature energy networks, and we also have topics that have to do with a lot of control and modeling, so something like virtual power plants, just to mention a few there. For the topic building and communities, we have like high-tech solutions like thermal regulative walls and windows, but we also have more available stuff like thermal mass activation, and we have a lot of system integration, so a lot of control and smart energy methods registered as well. And to have a little bit of feeling of how often some technologies occur in this research, you can see this here. We have listed every occurrence of a technology here, and if we start, let's say in the middle here and go clockwise here around, we can see that photovoltaics is used like a lot. So 82% of these registered solar energy buildings use photovoltaics. About half of them use solar thermal collectors. Then we have a big block of different heat pump technologies in the lower right corner here. We have biogas and biomass, especially for the colder climates. Then we have electrical batteries and a lot of thermal energy storages, typical hot water tanks. We also have grids involved in 23% of these buildings, and more than half of the buildings use some kind of an energy management system, some kind of a smart system to control the energy demand. I'm jumping now to this slide where we have the different technologies related to the heating degree day zones I've shown you earlier, which gives us a very quick insight on where the technologies or which technologies are more prevalent. So we can see that photovoltaics, as I said, are used very widely, but we have them more in the more warm and moderate climates. In contrary, the solar thermal collectors are used more in the colder climates, of course, because there's also more heat needed. Then we see heat pumps used basically in every climate. We can see thermal energy storages, of course, also more prevalent in the colder climates. And we can see that, for example, energy management systems are also used basically everywhere. From what we had so far was more like the state of solar energy buildings, like the current technologies. Now I would like to move more towards the future solar technologies. So for all these recorded technologies, we did this market potential analysis where we looked at entry barriers, political environment, the internal environment, the market size and growth rate. And out of these four ratings, we formed the total rating, and and finally we also assessed a probability that the technology will be a relevant option in the next 3 years, which is basically an expertise-based estimation for every one of these technologies. And that means that we did this assessment to show which of these technologies will be like rising in the next 3 years, for example. So we do not want to exclude any technology that maybe at the time has quite a low TRL and maybe still high costs. It's just an perspective on which one will move fast in the closest time. So if we do such an analysis and view at such a table, If you see a table like this, you can probably see that you can't see anything at all. So therefore, my colleague Thomas gladfully developed the technology radar I want to show you next. So here on this technology radar, we have marked any one of those technologies we found, and basically with the dot size, we mark the market potential of the technology, and with the color, the expert rating. So yeah, what's the prospect for the next time? There is a clustering again on the topic of the technology, and there is also a time frame, or a rough time frame included there. So let's say the more close to the center the technologies are, and the greener they are, the higher is the chance, or the highest the implementation chance, or the chance of rising shares for these technology in the following years. So if you're interested in this radar and the underlying data, they will be published also within our next project deliverable, so probably within the following month. Additionally to the existing technology radar and the data I've shown you, there is also an outcome still to be done. So we are planning this information about each solution we found here, or selected solutions, and this will be presented in short fact sheets, which will hold a description of the solution, some examples, maybe with images of current applications, and also references to scientific literature, journals, or relevant documents. Yeah, so with this slide, I am already at the end with my presentation on subtask D. And I can say thanks for Thomas, especially for doing a lot of the research there, and also thanks for listening. And I'm happy to answer some of your questions, or looking forward for you to contact me.
Okay, Michael, great. I really like the technology radar as one of the outcomes of the task, and the many discussions, and looking at a lot of more than 100 demonstration projects around Europe. Yeah, so we have a number of questions, and I would like to start with Frank, but you can join me all together, all my speakers here on the floor. Yeah, there was somebody asking whether the reference buildings you referred to that were defined in subtask A are real buildings or some hypothetical concepts using some simulation tools.
Yeah, maybe it's possible that I share my screen. You can show something regarding this question. Is that
okay,
possible?
but maybe you, because we are a bit advancing in time. Okay, but
Okay.
possible.
If not, I'll just explain. Yeah, there is something coming.
I just allowed you.
Okay, to share again, good.
Okay, can you see this template?
Yes.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in my presentation, this tool, which is a simple Excel table, you can see here how the different countries, member countries, can define their reference building. So here are data about the building in general, then you have data about the building envelope, which you can insert, the energy supply system, and so on. So it's everything that a building consists of here, it should be. And on the right two columns, there are some examples for Germany, but that can be filled in for any other country as well. So it should be, coming back to the question, it should be more or less practical, real building. But maybe you don't find it somewhere and you can go there and say, this is my reference building. It is a question of defining it, and it should be close to reality. Of course, it can be used for simulation, and it can be measured also. Can be one of the examples that is shown in the other subtasks, and inserted here, and maybe varied in different values, and make it as a reference building. So it should be something that you can work with.
Okay, I think regarding this Excel sheet, there was also the question of how this can be quoted and how this can be used, and whether this is publicly available.
Well, this has to be defined by each member country or institutions there. So we do not define, we give the tool, but we did not define reference buildings for all the countries and regions. We defined some for Germany. The IEA defined some for Austria, Austria, and so there is a tool available that everybody can define. Every country can define their own reference.
Okay, good. So you don't receive an Excel which is already filled in for your country, but you have to do the work yourself.
Right.
Okay, good. Then thanks for sharing. I think that was very enlightening. So then we have questions to Elisabeth. First, somebody wants to know the Denmark models that you showed. Was this the 90% self-sufficiency? Was this based on a 15 minutes interval or an annual basis simulation?
Can you hear me? Yes, that was based on the short time step interval. So it was not on an annual basis. It was a Polisson uses different time steps between 1 second and more minutes, depending on if something is happening in the system. So at night, when nothing is happening, it goes for longer time steps, and during the daytime, where a lot happens, it can go to the very small time step of 1 second. So that's the true self-sufficiency rate.
Okay. And in your example, it was mostly solar energy, because we have somebody asking whether heat pumps were at all part of your solutions in your demonstration buildings, or was your solar construction?
Yeah, it was the technologies included were both PV and battery for the electricity consumption, both of the appliances and of the heat pump. And then there was solar thermal to heat the storage tank, and then there was a heat pump also to heat the storage tank for the consumption. So all those technologies were included.
Were included and reached together the solar share that you calculated.
Yes.
In some of the demonstration plants.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, but we did this. We also used 2-axis tracking for both the solar thermal and the PV, which of course is something that adds cost to the system, and probably it also needs more space because you want to avoid one collector shading another collector and so forth. But we wanted to see how far can we go by normal means. I mean, this is a realizable system for a single family house. So we wanted to see how big areas and how large storage tank is needed to reach a higher degree of self-sufficiency. And then we reached this 90%, and then by means of a smart control, it's possible to cover the remaining 10% of the energy demand by use of cheap electricity. But you need a smart control for that, so that you can always charge when the electricity is low. And at that point, when the electricity price is low, that is also when we have a lot of renewables in the system. So it's a very good time to use the energy. Whereas when the energy price is not low, that's probably when a power plant has been set in because the wind is not blowing and the sun is not shining.
Okay. Clear, yes. So how about South America? You were the one covering almost all, well, continents, but South America was missing. And we have a participant here who says we are very far behind in implementing self-sufficiency and solar energy buildings. Did you have the chance to investigate any case studies in South America?
Unfortunately, no. We took all the cases we could find, but we don't have a participant in this particular subtask. I know there is somebody from Mexico participating, but they did not supply a demonstration case.
No demonstration case.
So therefore,
Okay.
no.
This was not covered. Okay. Then Michael, regarding your analysis, we have a participant asking why or whether there are not hydrogen solutions showing up. Is this too early? Have you looked into hydrogen, boilers or whatever? Or found them in any of your case studies?
Yeah, I mean, apparently the work is based on what could be found there in these cases. And apparently, as far as I know right now, there was no hydrogen solution included there. So we also didn't record the technology and didn't do any research particularly on hydrogen there. The reason why it might not be included yet, yeah, could be a price topic, could be just early
stage.
Early stage problem there. Also, the question, question on safety maybe in the buildings and so on. So I don't know. I don't know exactly, but there was no hydrogen included there.
How about building integrated PV? Here somebody says that it's the most efficient way of doing indoor heating as well in climate regions with the solar irradiation. When you had a high share of PV in your buildings, in which extent it was facade integrated?
I don't know the exact number, or I would have to look it up now in the report, but there was facade integrated PV included. Still, those systems are the minority. I think the question was also about why it is not included more in buildings, and typically the thing is that maybe in urban area, like in rural areas, if you have more space to plant PV somewhere around the house or on the rooftops, it definitely makes more sense to do this. In urban areas where you would need the facade areas, you often have to have the problems of building to building shading if the buildings are lower. And if it comes to high-rise buildings where you would have a lot of radiation into the facade, then you have the problem of you have the fire problem. So the whole construction gets absurdly expensive because you need the firewalls at every few stories, and everything has to be rated for fire resistancy, and not even the PV modules themselves are resistant. So it gets kind of crazy if it gets to high-rise buildings with this topic.
Okay. Maybe a question to Michael and to Harald. In general, which measures can be taken to increase the self-sufficiency of buildings under the European weather conditions? What are your lessons learned from all the work you have done so far in the task?
Yeah, maybe I start and then Michael can continue. I think to increase the self-sufficiency, there are, on one hand, technical measures, which are, for example, batteries. So if you have batteries that you can charge during the day, then you can increase your self-sufficiency because you have PV electricity available during the night. This is one technical measure. The other technical measure is, as also mentioned by Elisabeth, advanced control strategies. So predictive control strategies, looking at the weather forecast. So for example, if it's clear that there will be a few cloudy days, then you could heat up your building above the set temperature to avoid heating in periods where there is not enough solar radiation available. This is a strategy. Then adaptive controls, so self-learning controls. For example, if the control knows that you take a shower in the morning and then nothing happens until lunchtime because nobody is at home, then there is no chance to directly recharge the store, the hot water store, after it is emptied in the morning. You can wait until 11 o'clock if there is enough sun, and if not, then you can start charging electrically or in another way, but not with solar. So this is an option. And then beside the non-technical strategies, there are also strategies related to changing consumer behavior. For example, that you do your washing during periods where you have a lot of sun, because then you can operate your washing machine in a perfect case with hot water from the solar thermal collector and with PV electricity from the PV panel. But of course, this requires changes in the consumer behavior. So these are a few ideas, but maybe Michael, you have some more?
Yeah, I can just follow up there a little bit and say that there is, I don't think there is a magic ingredient that can solely rise the solar share for buildings. I think it all comes down to storage, and not only batteries, but also thermal storage, as the examples of Elspeth showed. If you have enough capacity and you can over-dimension your collector a little bit to spare something for times with lower irradiation, then you're basically, yeah, very lucky. And following up on that, as Harald already said, smart control and also charging buildings using building masses as thermal buffers is also a very valid thing to do, as with solar thermal generation, but also with PV plus heat pump solutions. So I think there is a lot of potential to be used there, but unfortunately, sun is only supplying so much in some regions. So yeah, storage and collector size, I would say.
Okay.
So I would like to add. I would like to add to this that you have to reduce the heat loss of the building or the energy demand of the building, because then it's much easier to cover by renewables. So that's, I think, it should be the first step to really reduce the energy demand. Thank you.
Okay, good one as well. Elizabeth, there's also a question: when you have higher solar fractions with collectors, how do you deal with the stagnation during summer?
Yeah, you can do that in different ways. So if you the typical way of operating a pressurized solar collector loop is by adding a large expansion vessel, or a larger expansion vessel than in what we used to do traditionally, and a safety valve with a high opening pressure. And then if there is no load on the system and the sun keeps shining, then actually what happens is that the fluid in the solar collector will heat up to the evaporation point. It will evaporate, and then it will push the fluid or the liquid out of the solar collector into this big expansion vessel, and then nothing more will happen. And then when the sun stops shining, the expansion vessel will push the fluid back into the solar collector, and then it can start operating the next day. So of course this requires that the hydraulics of the collector is made in a way that it's possible to empty the collector easily. So it should be made, sort of, the hydraulics should be made as an upside U for the whole system, so that it can be drained off. And otherwise, if the system has a borehole or some kind of a ground source heat exchanger, then you have a low temperature storage there, so you can just put any heat that cannot be put into the tank or cannot be utilized in the building, you can put it into the ground. And in this way, which is very good, then you can sort of stabilize the ground temperature, which would otherwise, if you just extract heat from the ground and never put heat back into the ground, in years, the temperature of the ground source would decrease. But you can avoid that by charging the ground again during summer with energy from the solar thermal collector.
Yes. this was a very sufficient answer for the end. Thank you very much for all the speakers. And I think you want also to add something? You want to have the last word?
Oh, no, I don't want to have the last word. But maybe I can add, Elizabeth, you almost mentioned, but you can, if you have storage which is large enough, seasonal storage, then of course you can shift the energy, the over energy at that time into that storage and keep it to the.
Of course, you need a sink suitable. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for the live discussion and the very good presentations. Thanks to the participants for all the questions. And I will hand back to Melina for the last administrative words.
Thank you, Bärbel. Thank you for moderating, and also thank you for to all the speakers. Yeah, I would like to quickly mention that the recording of this webinar will be available online in a few days. And that if you're not an ISIS member yet, you might think of joining, because there you have unlimited access to all the ISIS webinars, which also includes all the webinars on the IEA SHC Solar Academy. And yeah, then a small announcement. In October, we're going to New Delhi for the Solar World Congress. If you still feel like coming to India, we will be happy to have you there. And yeah, you can still register. And in general, if you have feedback, we're happy if you let us know via email to public.relations@isis.org. And we will send you a survey in the next days, which we would very much value if you fill it out. And yeah, with this, thank you again to all of our speakers and to Bärbel for moderating, and to everyone who joined and asked questions. And see you next time. Have a great day.
Okay, have a great day. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.